Hello, everyone. I'm Marcia Kavanaugh. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, only a few months ago, Jefferson Parish officials were thinking that companies would come begging to run their hospitals. Well, now it's the parish that might have to do the begging. On the North Shore, DA Walter Reed's political career might have been on life support, so he decided to check out. We'll examine those stories tonight, as well as a new pre-release program at Angola and the latest on the congressional races. Our Future Watch segment looks at a program to finance aspiring entrepreneurs. And we will examine what Bobby Jindal looks like on the national stage. On our stage are tonight's Informed Sources. Errol, Laborde, producer of Informed Sources. Rob Masson, reporter, WVUE Fox 8 News. Don Ostrom, our Future Watch reporter here at Channel 12, and Stephanie Grace, columnist, the New Orleans Advocate. First, we're going to go over to Rob, and I'm going to say welcome back, Rob. It's been a long time. It's good to have you at this table again.
I missed you guys.
And we're going to talk about St. Tammany Parish DA Walter Reed and his announcement this week and his continued statements about the media, too.
Yeah, not very kind to the media after a series of reports from Fox 8, the Times-Picayune, and the Advocate reporting on a lot of campaign irregularities and other things over the last several months. There was a lot of speculation as to whether he would run again. He was a fairly solidly entrenched politician in St. Tammany for a lot of years until these reports started running. But this week, he called his staff in, locked the doors to the office at about 11:30 in Covington. It interrupted some court proceedings that were going on as well, and everybody was wondering exactly what would happen. They emerged. Again, he did not talk to the media, didn't go on camera, just released a printed statement basically blaming the media for reports that he felt had been a distraction to his office. He didn't feel that they were going away. Didn't mention anything about the federal grand jury investigation, which is ongoing from what we understand.
Into his office, into the DA's office,
into
right?
the DA's office, into his operations. Meantime, the reports continue to come out, and this week focused in on DA office funds being used for personal medical expenses. So the drumbeat continued there, and three candidates now lining up to run for this office, including Roy Burns, Alan Black, and someone out of the St. Tammany Sheriff's Office who formerly worked in the DA's office, Brian Traynor.
Has he ever just done a sit-down with the media, done interview or anything like this about... No, we got to see heads,
Absolutely
heads
not,
shaking.
no.
He did take out some ads, though, in newspapers to talk to his constituents, which was interesting.
Go ahead.
Which he pointed out was paid for by his campaign fund, which, the reports have been fairly steady, showing his son getting exorbitant amounts of money to furnish bar service and to produce TV ads for him over the years. But it's unknown whether that will rise to the level of criminality, but certainly that is something that the feds are looking at.
We know that, yes, we know that that's one of the areas that they have looked at. Some of the subpoenas have been for this campaign activity. And the feds have also visited his office, I should say.
We should mention the reason they call them district attorneys as opposed to parish attorneys is that many of them represent several parishes, and he's St. Tammany and Washington Parish as well. But Rob, you live on the North Shore. What are people thinking? I mean, you've seen your coroner. You've seen a lot of public officials have gotten in trouble, or are they thinking that there's an outbreak of corruption? They're just better investigating now.
I think there definitely is better investigating. I do think that's a function of some of the separated media that we've seen over the last years, and that's a good thing. A lot of these things are being looked at for the first time. I don't think there's an overwhelming sense of shock when you see this. I mean, a lot of people are familiar with South Louisiana politics, and a lot of people moved there to get away from some of that, I guess. But I don't think there's any general overall surprise at what's going on. Disappointment, yes. A lot of people wondering who's going to come in and take these people's place at this point. But and then there are a lot of people who are entrenched, who've been in St. Tammany a long time, who still like Walter Reed, still feel very, very strongly toward him. And
it's been a successful office, has it not, in terms of prosecutions?
Yes, very, very successful. An overwhelming conviction rate over there, and I think people generally feel safe over there, and I think they give that office some credit. But nobody likes these reports, and there's nobody who's you see any sort of physical rallying to his side, at least in public, as you see these announcements being made. But I think most people are very appreciative of the media reports and are glad to see a change going on, because I think there is generally, as there is elsewhere, very low tolerance for this kind of behavior.
And are the residents there at St. Tammany getting a little bit more engaged and more active too, and trying to find out what's going on with these public officials and public offices? Are you finding that?
I think so. Yes, I think so. There's a lot more interest. There's some grassroots groups forming up.
That were
Louisiana
involved in
United International.
some of the Galvin stuff, and also the anti-fracking movement.
Well, the Concerned Citizens of St. Tammany grew out of an environmental issue and is now very, very active in the anti-fracking movement as well. And that group boasts several hundred members, and that's only within the last 2 or 3 years.
So Mr. Reed is not running after, what, 30 years or so in office, and have other candidates now come forward?
Yes, 3 attorneys, Alan Black, Roy Burns, and Brian Traynor. Roy Burns, a longtime defense attorney there, and Brian Traynor used to work in the DA's office. He's got the endorsement of the St. Tammany Sheriff's Office right now.
And will that be a fall election?
Fall
This
election.
So
qualifying in August.
Okay. All right, Rob, thanks a lot. Stephanie, over to you, and let's
Yes.
talk Jefferson Parish hospitals. And we've talked about Jefferson Parish hospitals,
a
saying
lot.
that perhaps in the future it'll get clearer. It isn't
It
any
is
clearer.
the opposite. In fact, they seemed serious this time. They really, the parish council, the hospital boards, the kind of political structure, seemed like they acknowledged that these hospitals, these publicly owned hospitals, needed to become part of a partnership. There have been a lot of starts and stops in the past, but they went to the legislature and got a law that would have required a public vote overturned. They put out bids. They had 3 suitors: HCA, which is a for-profit company out of Tennessee; Ostrom, which is kind of the local rival to East Jefferson General Hospital; and Children's, which of course has been really active in the changing landscape, I guess, taking over the LSU hospitals in Toro and everything. As you said, they had 3 active suitors. I think all 3 of the hospital companies felt really good about their chances. One by one, they have dropped off. First HCA, then Ochsner, and Children's is still involved, but they at this point are only negotiating with the West Jefferson General Hospital, because East Jeff, they wanted to go with HCA, and then they were talking to Ochsner. There's been a real split between the 2 hospitals. They initially wanted a contract for both hospitals, and that fell apart. That basically deadlocked. So we're from 3 companies for both hospitals down to 1 hospital, 1 company, and the 1 company is pretty upset right now. They're threatening to walk too.
And that's Children's.
And that's Children's.
What's causing all the walks?
It's so, they're all really saying the same thing. They're tired of the dysfunction. They're tired of the unpredictability. They're tired of the political shenanigans they see. They feel like they're getting attacked. Their reputations are at stake because, we've really broken down to these 2 camps, and some of the politicians are really attacking the companies.
Well, there was a report that that Children's, and I can't remember the full name, the actual name of the corporation right now, but what we know as Children's,
Yes.
that they had perhaps changed the terms of the deal,
And
which they said, no, that wasn't the case.
That's the most recent thing to happen. So basically, they were in beginning negotiations to take over West Jefferson General Hospital, and they did rewrite their proposal. And the proposal calls for a lower payment than initially planned. There's dispute over what that means. It basically seems to be, they initially were talking about taking over pension costs that they wouldn't be taking over, so it wouldn't be less of an investment necessarily into facilities, but it's the latest of many, many problems that have arisen, and where we are now is Children's says basically we might walk too.
They might want to. And then, of course, East Jefferson was saying, well, HCA, think of us again. Please think about us again. And
Yes.
HCA is saying, no.
And really the idea was that, you would have the 2 hospitals were supposed to be very attractive as a unit because they covered a lot of people. There would be efficiencies. Everything's getting, everybody's becoming part of a system, and so maybe they're not as valuable separately even. But we just can't get beyond the real divisions between the political factions, and also they serve different populations. I think that's some of it too. I think there's a different cultural. There are some different cultures in the 2 hospitals.
Business hates uncertainty, This
Yeah.
process has not been very clear from the very start.
Very secretive.
You've got Obamacare kind of coming in, sort of making for an uncertain landscape, I think, as well for these
Right.
corporations.
And Children's is involved in all of these other upheavals in the medical industry, even locally.
But
So-
Children's was local. They were they looked like a shoe-in for West Jeff
did.
there, and HCA was one of the first to drop out, perhaps because they were a little unfamiliar with our political waters
I
here.
think so. I think they were overconfident.
So to wrap this up, just real quick, what's the
Yeah.
next step then?
Negotiations are still ongoing. We don't know.
Okay, that's it. Once again, we still don't know. Thanks a
Yes.
lot, Stephanie. Okay, Errol, our governor is sort of, traveling around the country a lot, really not making it much of a secret that he's sort of interested in running for president, don't you think?
I think he is. First, the last conversation, Oxner. I mean, Oxner's name always is. Let's not rule that out at some point because I mean,
It could be a
if
compromise
it's really
choice.
going on.
We don't
Yeah,
know.
think about this. Like anytime there's a story involving state government, that Jindal's position is always explained by, well, he wants to be president. I mean, it's a given. So we're just thinking about what his chances are of actually being president. I mean, he is a certain celebrity on the national stage, and then I guess this is the time to start speculating. It occurred to me that of all the people in the nation who'd like to be the next president of the United States, it's already narrowed down to maybe about 14 people. And two of them are on the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden, and probably of those two, Hillary Clinton. So you can almost say, the Democrat side, that's pretty easy. And so the real question is on the Republican side, who's going to be the nominee? And so these are the people who are most talked about in terms of Jeb Bush and Chris Christie and Ted Cruz and Mike Huckabee, former governor of Arkansas. And you used to scoff and say a governor of Arkansas could never be elected president. Rand Paul. Of course, Huckabee has been able to maintain a media career, and
Next page.
yeah, next page. Yeah. Okay. Well, Rick Perry and Marco Rubio. Now, one thing that Jindal has had the advantage is the ethnic advantage. I remember John McGinnis used to refer to Jindal as the Barack Obama of the Republican Party, and that has an advantage. It probably has more advantage in the Democratic Party, which is more of a party of minorities. But Marco Rubio is going to be there too, especially with Hispanic voters, and you can see that Florida is going to be very much in play in this. Scott Walker, who's governor of Wisconsin, is sort of like a Jindal type governor, or you might say that Jindal's a Walker type governor, and that they've both done a lot of cutbacks. They've both taken a lot of flack within their state, and just this week, Scott Walker came out more strongly against Common Core, and so they're all landing in the same position. So, where Jindal winds up, I don't know. In the polls, he never shows up very high. Now, it's happened before that this year, this early in the process, that the ultimate winner doesn't show up high. But he's really running down in the pack. There was a Gallup poll that came out today that showed him running toward the bottom. One little curiosity thing is it looked at potential Democrat swing voters, and of all those Republican candidates, Jindal and Chris Christie got the highest Democratic swing vote, which is surprising. And the only reason I can think about without having a chance to analyze it is probably the ethnic factor.
Right. It might also be that he's not as well known. The poll also showed he wasn't as well known as people like Ted Cruz, and Democrats might have more negative feelings towards Ted Cruz because he is kind of the Tea Party guy.
Well, Errol, when do the debates start? Remember, for the last election, it seemed like we had, forever debates as far as the Republican Party was concerned.
All of that's going to start.
Yeah,
all of that's going to start in 2016. I mean, it goes on. I mean, once you start having the primaries and the
Well, the
Iowa
Republicans
caucuses
are really
and the
trying to. They don't want to repeat what we had last time. They felt like the situation really got out of control.
It
took forever, and there were so many of them, and the candidates were shooting at each other, and they didn't like some of the moderators. So there's a concerted effort now to not repeat that, which will be interesting to see.
Thinking about the Jindal Barack Obama analogy, and of course there's a lot of differences, but they're both interesting speakers in their own way. But Obama is such a forceful, compelling
Right.
speaker, whereas Jindal pretty much likes to recite facts. He likes to move quickly.
And quickly.
Yeah.
And quickly.
But,
One thing
but,
that's-
but the big
it's good to
advantage
do.
Obama had was Illinois. I mean, having Illinois as a political base is a lot more powerful than Louisiana. So.
Okay, well, we're going to have more time, I'm sure, to talk about Governor Jindal and his political aspirations. Right now, we're going to Future Watch and Dawn, and there's an effort now to try to get entrepreneurs some financing, not just ones here, but the ones that could come
This is
here.
a program called Power Moves NOLA. It was launched during Essence Fest because Essence gave it the big lift, but it had already been going on. It's an initiative of the New Orleans Startup Fund, funded by the Startup Fund, which is headed up by Leslie Jacobs, and some unnamed wealthy families in New Orleans who want to see businesses succeed here. And basically they have built a platform, or they call it an ecosystem, for women and minority entrepreneurs to have access to capital and business resources that they didn't otherwise have. And minorities, that's African Americans, Hispanic Americans, and Native Americans. In the last 12 months, this group has vetted more than 400 entrepreneurs nationwide from around the world who fit the bill of women or minority. And that doesn't mean the whole company has to be women or minorities. It's about a 30% stake, at least, to qualify. They vetted them. They made a short list of about 40 of them and brought them to New Orleans during Essence for a 20 of them are in the early stage of startup and kind of needed a boot camp to hone their skills and make their businesses successful. They will end up helping the winners of those 20 raise up to $1 million. The other 20 were established companies that participated in a pitch competition, and the winners of those pitch competitions got $250,000 directly into those companies.
How many winners?
You know, I believe it was 6 winners, but of the whole group of 40, 6 companies have now announced plans to move to New Orleans because they've learned through this program that New Orleans does have what it takes to be a good place to do business. And I'm told by the guy who's heading this initiative up, once they get here, New Orleans really isn't a hard sell. It's for them to come do business here. The companies that are relocating, one is called boldguidance.com. It's an online college counseling facility. They have 3 employees now, but they expect that number to grow exponentially as it catches on. Another one is called assurevest.com. It's a tech-enabled insurance and financial services company. They also have three employees now, expected to really take off.
So
Another
is that
one's
the general theme? We're seeing tech
a
companies.
lot of
by and
tech
large?
companies, a lot of tech companies. And then the goal is that they'll get here and they'll encourage Loyola, Tulane, Xavier, UNO students to stay and say, you know, this is the place to get that really cool job post-college. You don't have to go to Austin or Boston or San Francisco. Their hope is, I said, you know, what is your plan 10 years out? Right now they're funded to go through at least 3 years of this, with the competition getting bigger and bringing in more than 40 and vetting the companies every year. 10 years out, they hope to have worked their way out of a job because the capital's here, the resources are here, the entrepreneurs are just kind of forcing
So they
success
have a
among each other.
Good infrastructure. Errol?
Yeah, we were at a luncheon the other day where Lauren LeBlanc, better known as Lauren Thom, who started in her 30s. She had decided she was raising 3 kids, and she decided she wanted to sell T-shirts, and so she got in the T-shirt business. But she used the internet to sell the T-shirts, and she did the Who Dat T-shirts and all that, and it is what is now known as Flirty Girls, which is around town, and has really just built this. And so this woman working alone, raising kids, getting on the internet, having a few breaks along the way, has been able to develop a real successful business. And so you see this happening.
Right. I asked what's the response from the people, especially the people who won the competition, and some of the quotes I was given was one of the best weekends of my life. I thought I was alone in this world of trying to find my way to get capital. I didn't have any idea there were so many people like me, and it's been so successful that the group has been contacted by the Department of Commerce to try to do similar programs in both Detroit and Oakland.
And real quick, because we're out of time on this really, how can people find out more about it? Do you have an address or something that they can go to?
PowerMovesNOLA.org.
Okay, great.
PowerMovesNOLA.org.
Thanks a lot, Dawn. All righty, we're going back over now to Rob. And you did a tour yesterday of our state prison of Angola, and you saw something that really is pretty encouraging.
Yeah, 2 Orleans criminal court judges, Arthur Hunter and Lori White, have set up a program. It's a pre-release program at Angola. They're sentencing people to Angola, which is normally for people with life sentences. But what their goal is to try and stop the recidivism rate. show them how it works in Angola, get them with other mentors who have been brought along through kind of a religious training program that's been set up at Angola, where they give these people mentorship, and they also give them training. There's 19 technical areas that they train them in, everything from air conditioning to auto mechanics. And the program seems to be showing some success. Judge White says she's put 130 people through the program. She's had 5 graduates. They're all doing very, very well. She's hoping now to try and get them pardons, and she's hoping that other judges follow suit. 7 other Louisiana parishes are looking at the program now. There were 2 other states there looking at the program. And U.S. Attorney Ken Polite was there as well, saying that the states are now kind of the example for this sort of program, and the feds are looking at it now
Don't
as
we
well.
incarcerate more people than any other state, too? It's strange that we'd be a model for that kind of program.
Well, we do, and this is a really different sort of program. I think it's a tribute to what's going on in Angola these days. One columnist said Angola looks a little bit better than Orleans Parish Prison right now, and not getting full access to Orleans Parish Prison, I'd have to agree, just from the reports that we hear coming out. Ever since Burl Cain has been there, he's been there since 1995, he's always given us full access to the facility, and you see less overbearing presence from guards, and you see more freedom among the inmates. There certainly isn't the death rate that used to plague that facility as well. It used to be one of the most violent hospitals in the country.
And so what the judges are
prisons
doing,
in the country.
What the judges are doing, Judge White and Judge Hunter, they're actually sending people there maybe for first-time offenses who what I've read is their immediate response was, what, to Angola?
Right.
And then Judge Hunter is saying, you're going to be happy. Because of the
Right.
re-entry program that has been in place at Angola, and trying to train people to get a job when they get out of prison,
Yes.
which reduces recidivism.
Yes,
And
and it's still they've still got big hurdles to overcome. I mean, I think there still is a resistance from many employers to hire former inmates. They want more businesses to jump on board. They want more businesses to get involved
Right.
with the training, and they need more rehab programs too, because a lot of these people have drug problems, and
Right.
when they get out, if things don't fall into place for them immediately, the first 72 hours are critical. They might go back into the old habits, so they need some more support for that. But so far, early results are promising. There are a lot of employers who are willing to give these folks a chance, and they're just wanting to see more of this.
It's life skills training, too, that they're getting there, not just job training.
Big part of it, yes. They have to go through moral mentorship before they go into the jobs program.
Okay, Rob, thanks a lot. Sounds very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Stephanie, over to you. We're going to
Yes.
talk politics a little bit more. We do have congressional races coming up this fall.
We do.
And they just always are just so interesting. Different things happening all the time.
Well,
Fill us in.
I think we're going to have a couple of barn burners here in Louisiana, one in the 5th District, one in the 6th District. Other parts of the state, but getting a little bit close to our viewership area, but really some big characters involved in all of them. I think the biggest character in each race is not necessarily the front runner, but in the 5th District you have Vance McAllister. Remember, the guy who came out of nowhere, elected not even a year ago in a special election, was kind of hot for a while, was having a really nice honeymoon, getting a lot of press, brought Willie Robertson from Duck Dynasty to the State of the Union. And then all of a sudden, he was the kissing congressman.
Mm-hmm.
He was caught on tape kissing very passionately his aide and Republicans.
Not his wife.
Not his wife, but
the wife
a
of a
married
good
aide,
friend.
but a wife of
Yeah.
a good friend.
And instantly shunned by the party.
Instantly. People like Eric Cantor, now we know what happened to him. Bobby Jindal called for him to resign. He went away for a while, thought about it, came out and said, I'm going to finish my term. And then all of a sudden, we started to get press releases for him saying he was having all these constituent events, and you're thinking, he's reconsidering. And he did reconsider. He announced recently that he is going to run again.
As a Republican.
As a Republican. He's someone who's had some crossover support because of some of the, he's taken some moderate positions, even though he's basically a conservative. It's a Republican district. But you would not make him the front runner by any means, I think. On the other hand, there isn't an obvious front runner. There are a number of other Republicans who've announced. None of them are really household names. There's a former DA from Alexandria, otherwise newcomers. One of them is a Duck Dynasty relative, so actually, the campaign finance reports came out this week, and they were very telling. This guy, Zach Dasher is his name. He has a whole bunch of contributions from people named Robertson. The most interesting thing on Vance McAllister's was that he refunded the contributions from the the aide and the husband.
What
He
about
gave
the
them back.
Democrats? What about the Democrats in that
Democrats are
race?
interesting. There's the best known candidate probably is Jamie Mayo, who is the mayor of Monroe, who has announced. He ran last time, but there were several Democrats, so they kind of canceled each other out in the primary. So we ended up with a Republican on Republican primary, and Vance McAllister then got a lot of the Democrats against the establishment candidate, the establishment Republican, a guy named Neil Reiser, who's not running again. So there's really an opening for an establishment Republican, and we don't really know who that is now, because I think voters will be more cautious this time.
And McAllister wasn't the front runner the first time.
He wasn't
I mean,
at
it
all.
seemed like the whole thing had been orchestrated for Reiser.
Which is one of the reasons McAllister did so well, because
Yeah.
there was a real backlash against that. And then we move over to the 6th district, and again, another very Republican district. And there are, 8 or 9 Republicans running, and there's a Democrat, and his name is Edwin Edwards. So that's who everyone's talking about. Again, it's a very Republican district. Even parts of Baton Rouge that used to be part of it have been taken out to become part of the 2nd district in New Orleans. But there's Edwin Edwards, and this week he had a profile in New York Magazine and National Journal, and he is living the life out there in the campaign trail. Meanwhile, the guys who might actually win are putting their campaigns together.
There's quite a slate of candidates.
It's quite a slate, and there are some well-known names. One is Garrett Graves, who has been the state's coastal advisor for a long time, so he might not be that well-known publicly, but he's got a lot of institutional support, raising a lot of money. There's a state senator named Dan Claytor from Baton Rouge, and he comes out of an area that launched Jay Darden, who's running for the lieutenant governor, Bill Cassidy, the incumbent now. I mean, there are a couple Tea Party candidates. One, Paul Dietzel, whose grandfather was the LSU coach.
Familiar name. Yeah.
There's a woman named Lenore Whitney who has caused a bit of a stir because she's put out a viral video calling global warming a hoax and talking about the lamestream media trying to be the Sarah Palin. And the interesting thing is you have these big crowded races, and they're free-for-alls, and if somebody takes off, they're the front runner, but if the vote gets split a bunch of different ways, who knows?
Okay, we are done for the discussion
Yes.
right now, and we're going to go look ahead, and we have about 15 or 20 seconds each.
Okay. The RTA has announced they're pushing back the ferry hours, which is good, from 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock most nights. They're going to do it actually, I think, next week. They have to push it back to August the 4th to get a little bit more, few more employees, but it is coming, so August the 4th.
Rob.
End of an era on Bourbon Street. We're working on a story today, in fact, about Lindy Boggs' former home being up for sale. I interviewed Bill Clinton there years ago, just after the Jennifer Flowers allegations broke when he was running for president. They're wanting $42,000 a month for it. It probably won't be a residence anymore, marking an end to residential home ownership on that stretch of Bourbon Street.
Sad to see that go. Don.
I'll help you save time because I was talking about the RTA expanded hours too.
Okay.
It took them a long time to get to this point because they had trouble hiring. They had trouble finding people to work.
Yes, Stephanie.
The same-sex marriage case that we've talked about previously, briefs have now come into Judge Martin Feldman. More and more states are declaring same-sex marriage legal. A lot of people thinking if anyone's going to go the other way, it could be him based on his background and politics. So we'll know whenever he decides to tell us.
We will see. Thanks so much, everybody, for being here. Thank you guys for joining us, too. And, of course, we want to see you again next week for Informed Sources. Have a good evening.